I'd literally cry down the phone to her. And I remember saying, Mum, it doesn't matter that I can do this job and I'm a really good pilot. They are not ready for me to do it. I knew what I wanted to be from about the age of 13, and I wanted to be a hairdresser. And because that's who I saw, I knew hairdressers. I mean, it was actually against the law for women to fly at that point. And how can you be something that you can't see? How can you even imagine doing something when there isn't somebody that looks like you, or you're not from that walk of life? Because I was a South London girl with a South London accent, and I ended up joining the Air Force because they offered me more money to go to university than anyone else would. And sometimes they're the way we make our decisions. And I happened to be in the right place at the right time with the right skills when they said, do you want to fly? And I put my hand up. I mean, yes, I had a number of different pushbacks, but there is something really interesting about what you were talking about sport, because I had been fencing from the age of 7, and my mum and dad had met at a fencing club, and you know what they're like, and make your kids do the same thing. And by the time I was 14, I could beat someone who went on to fence for England. And so I was good at fencing. What I hadn't realised that what it had gifted me is that hand-eye coordination, and it had built neural pathways in my brain. So when I did the aptitude tests to become a pilot, they were probably a bit of nurture and nature of how I'd developed them. I remember, and I'll be really honest, I remember being on the front line, and I was not greeted in the most positive way on my first day on the front line, which is a whole another story. And I had all sorts of different pictures which you find in certain magazines waiting for me, and all sorts, because they were making a bit of a statement which probably wouldn't be acceptable today, and one could argue wasn't acceptable then. And I remember I lost track of the number of times that I would just go home to the officers' mess, and I would ring my mum, because we didn't have mobiles in those days, and I'd literally cry down the phone to her. And I remember saying, Mum, it doesn't matter that I can do this job and I'm a really good pilot. They are not ready for me to do it. But I would have felt that I was letting down womankind. I felt I had a lot of responsibility to make it happen, because whilst I was the first in the UK, I was the 5th in the world. So there were very few of us around, and anybody would have just said, see, you know, a woman couldn't crack it. And I was not going to be that person. And so, yes, I felt like I could, but oh my goodness, I was not going to do that. Yeah, I mean, it's so complex, isn't it? When you put somebody new into a completely different environment. I would say that what was helpful for me is having a really dysfunctional family and upbringing, because that prepares you really well for life, actually. Has anyone seen that SAS stuff on TV? Does anyone think, I would love to go and do the interrogation? No, seriously. So anyone here think, I'd love to go and do interrogation?
I mean, yeah, I would.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. Anyone else?
I'm not sure about that.
Actually, be interrogated or
be interrogated.
Yeah.
I think so.
Because you learn so much more about who you are and how you're going to react under pressure. And what they do is they get hold of you, they weaken you by, you have no food and drink for a few days, and they chase you during the daytime, or you lay low during the daytime. They chase you with night vision goggles and dogs, hunter dogs. And then...
Notice you didn't say hunter cats. Anyway, carry on.
No hunter cats. And otherwise you couldn't have stayed if they were hunter cats. And then they capture you. And of course, they capture you purposefully, because then you're then going to be processed. And the hardest thing about that whole course was having to go into this little hut where there's a most amazing, kind doctor stood there and said, would you like to continue with this course? And all you want to do is scream, no, I want to go home and have a cup of tea. And instead you have to just take a deep breath and say, yes, please. And then you get strip searched, you get processed, you are in stress positions, either sitting cross-legged. Is there anyone still want to do this? Sitting cross-legged with your hands on your head, or leaning up against a wall, and you're blindfolded. so you can't see, and there's white noise, so you can't hear, and the side of the walls is like damp and wet, so you lose your touch. So you lose all sensation of who you are, and you're just left with your head. And they creep up behind you, and when they come to grab you, they slam their hand on your shoulder, so you sort of jump and come to. And then they run with you holding your thumbs. And before you actually do the training, they say to you, you have to give your name, rank, number and date of birth. And at a point that you will know of duress, you start giving more information. You're like, well, what's that point? What is that point? And they're like, you'll know. And I am the sort of person who's like, no, tell me what it is. You know, there is no doubt whatsoever. And I remember coming out of that at the point that they couldn't interrogate us any further. They gave one guy peeled a banana and put it and said, if you tell me this, you can eat a banana, and then turned his back on me. I literally had it in my mouth so quickly, I was munching down on it. But we came out and there was a wing commander who was on this course who was sitting crying. And I looked at him and I said, are you all right? He went, that is the worst thing I have ever experienced. And I looked at him and said, you should have grown up in Croydon. I just see life as a bit of a roller coaster, and actually it's part of those downs that let us appreciate the ups, as well as give us, I think, empathy to understand others. Because if we were always living a brilliant life, then how would we ever be understanding? And how would we ever be able to really stop and listen? And I would look, when I think about my flying career, there's something about that level of performance. And again, I was just listening to Laura's words about the impact that your own physical or mental well-being can have on your ability to perform. Because when you're flying a fast jet, when you are having to make the decisions at speed, when you are in close formation or you're operating over enemy territory, you have to be at peak performance all the time, and you have to be in the moment, irrelevant of what's been happening. And you have to understand your own physique, your own response, and put that to one side. And so there is something about being able to compartmentalize that I think is one of the skills that has come out, and I don't know if that's true in sport as well, but because you have to just be able to focus on the present and deliver what needs to be delivered at that point in time. Well, a funny experience, because I was walking the dogs in, do you like 2 dogs, no cats, up on the downs near where I live, and the phone rang, and it was the BBC asking me if I would go and do breakfast TV the next morning, because it was a Top Gun Maverick premiere. And I put the phone down and I said, let me think about it. And I said to my husband what was happening, and he said, great, what time? I went, I don't know if I can do it. And he said, why? And I said, because honestly, I don't want to look stupid on TV. Because I thought, what if they ask me questions and everybody will know what the answers are? And I had this idea anyway. He was like, you're the one that says put your brave boots on, just get on with it, girl. So I rang back, and once I'm in, I'm all in. And I turned up to the RF Museum the next morning. They've got the TV, and I'm talking down the camera, and they had the Tornado that I'd done my second ever flight in, 617 Squadron Tornado, and there were some steps, and I walked backwards up the steps, speaking to camera. My friends afterwards were like, they were waiting for me to fall over, which shows you my friends. And while I was talking, I thought, there's a real opportunity here. So I looked down the camera and I just said, such a shame I don't have tickets for the premiere tonight. By 2:00 in the afternoon, I had 2 tickets for the premiere, but I have 2 daughters. But one of them had decided to leave home the Sunday before. So I punished her by not taking her. But that was so sad, because she actually turned up at Leicester Square and waved at us going down the red carpet, which I thought was quite funny. But there are 2 red carpets. There's the red carpet for Tom Cruise and the royalty, and there was our red carpet. And my daughter was like, why aren't we on that one? And again, I said, just enjoy the moment. I mean, not only that, we got free popcorn. You know how much popcorn costs? It was huge. And we were sitting there and I said, it is such a shame we won't meet Tom Cruise, but that's how it is. And we were leaving and I saw the chair of the charity who'd given me the tickets and I waved. I was like, thank you. She was like, Jo, come here. She said, I've told Tom that you're here and he really wants to meet you. I was like, I think I could just squeeze that in. I mean, it did mean missing the last train and all of that. So we climbed over, and has anyone ever heard that knocking knees? Like literally, Beth's knees started to knock together. Her camera footage was awful. And we had a chat for about 5 minutes. He told me he'd pulled more G than I had. I told him I'd actually done the job. And when we left, BBC said, would you please come back in the morning and do breakfast TV? Only they sent a satellite truck to my house in my kitchen. I was cleaning it till 3 a.m. to get it. And then I had like a 12-minute TV slot. They kept asking me questions and I was enjoying myself. And I thought, this is working. So I said, it's just such a shame I've never flown in a Eurofighter Typhoon. Next week, I got to fly in a Eurofighter Typhoon. And seriously, we did a performance takeoff. We were at 10,000 feet before the end of the runway. It was absolutely amazing. And then just to cap it off, I'm an ambassador at the Royal International Air Tattoo. And I was there on the Friday that year, and they went, Jo, we've just heard Tom Cruise is here, and as you know him, would you host him for the day? So I said yes, and I spent the whole day with Tom, and I took him back to his helicopter at the end of the day, and I shook his hand, and he put his head on one shoulder, and he went, Jo, thank you, and gave me a huge hug, and I have not washed my jacket. But don't tell my husband.